everybody, and welcome to Sound Out. I'm your host, Jesse Hubbard. With me today is the ever talented Dave Buker from Dave Buker and the Historians. Brand new album coming out on June 2nd, Heirlooms, and we're going to talk about that as well as a special show that's going to be in conjunction with that. But welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk to you. Been a fan of your band for since I first heard you guys on CD 92.9 um, a couple years ago, I guess. I'm relatively new to Columbus, and I was
Okay,
like,
I was to
oh,
say
yeah.
it's hard to say when that would be because we've been. I was just doing another interview earlier today, and then somebody asked how long has the band been together. It's like, oh, it's 13 and a half years.
Yeah, that
Oh,
surprised me. That surprised me
yeah,
because I was doing a little research about, kind of going back, and I'm like, wow, like, yeah, 2010, right?
yeah, 2010. That's
Yeah.
crazy to
So
think about.
that's a good run. That's a good run. And I feel like you guys are just getting started too, you know?
I hope so. Yeah, I think so.
We're going to talk more about that and some of your past experiences and other albums and stuff. But so so I know you have a podcast
I
that
do.
deals with history, and we're going to talk more about that because I'm really into that as well. The band, the historians, where does that come from? Is it all kind of related?
It's not really. So yeah, I do have a podcast that has a history angle, but the name Historians with the band, that moniker is more about how we view songwriting. That
Hmm.
by being a songwriter, you're sort of documenting moments in your life or the moments of people around you that may have otherwise gone undocumented. So it's more like, it might have been better if we were Dave Buker and the documentarians. You know what I mean? But that's where the name comes from. So it doesn't have anything to do with our being in some of us being into history and studying history. It's more about perception of or perspective on songwriting.
And also the historians just rolls off the tongue a little bit better than documentarians. I think that's a mouthful.
Oh yeah, and then it's too many D's, and it's just it's a nightmare.
That'd be a lot. Um, so you got a new album coming out. It's very exciting. Heirlooms uh, on June the 2nd, coming up here very soon. And that's your first bit of new music since 2019.
That's right. Yeah,
Correct. New album, yeah.
2019 we did a new album. We did an album called "It Moves in the Dark," and then when the pandemic hit, we did a an EP of cover songs called "Costumes." But it's been a little over 4 years since we've released new music, which is longer than we would like. But obviously, the pandemic slowed things down a little bit.
That's what I was going to ask you about. I mean, I assume that probably slowed things down a little bit. Uh, but I know that you guys took a couple years, really took your time writing for this particular album. Was it always the plan to put that much time into writing, or was it kind of adapting to the situation and making the best of a bad situation?
I think it was more the latter. I mean, part of why the process of making this record was like 2.5 years was not just the writing, but the fact that we did a lot of it ourselves. And I sort of have a built out studio here in my house that we use for rehearsing and for recording. And I developed that a lot over the pandemic, and doing that EP of cover songs. That was sort of our way of like, okay, we're not going to get together to rehearse, so what can we do in our individual homes? So it allowed us to dabble a little bit more in home recording. We did work with Tony Rice at Orange Studio in Grandview, and it was mixed. The new album was mixed by James Harker at Moonlight Audio in Old Town East, but a good amount of the record itself was recorded here. So I think that, I don't think we could have gone into it knowing that that was the plan. Although I've always wanted to do more of our own recording, and the pandemic kind of allowed us to experiment with that and get comfortable with that process before we were doing it for our new music.
Yeah, and you mentioned costumes, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to touch on that real quick. I think it's a great name for an EP of cover songs. I thought that was really clever.
Well, and we were
Uh,
gonna put it out on Halloween,
is that
and
all? Is that all the band in the dressed up as kids on the cover?
it was all of us.
Yeah.
We got pictures from when we were younger. Some, I think were Brogan. It was like when he was in high school. For me, it was when I was maybe 7 or 8. Um, Yeah, it's all pictures of us as kids in costumes. And we kind of look at it like something we could do as an anthology series. Like there might be a costumes too at some point, because it was a lot of fun to interpret other people's music in our own way. So I imagine we'll do it again.
I loved it, and I think that's awesome. It's such a fun idea to do that. A great track list. Jade Bird, The Killers, Death Cab. Why those particular songs? Why did you guys choose those songs to cover?
Yeah, so what we did was the way that it all came about. When the pandemic started, you probably remember that a lot of people were doing these like live stream from home concerts, and so I did one, and in doing that, I covered a song by the Killers. I'm trying to remember what song did we even do? Smile Like You Mean It. And
Yeah.
and then we did another one, and Leanna joined me on that. And I said to everybody, I'd really like to record this because I think it'd be fun. Maybe it'd be a good test of our home recording capabilities. And out of that idea came the idea of like, well, let's all pick a song. I picked one. There's
Oh, cool.
four other people. Everybody else pick a song. So everyone got to choose a song and kind of give it its direction. And in some cases, it was a totally like an aesthetic change. Like there's a Gillian Welch song, "Everything Is Free." Brogan picked that, and he wanted to do a very like a much more synthetic version of it. Joe picked that Jade Bird song, and he totally rearranged the chords at the end of the song, so it was like more of a less of a like style thing and more of a writing change. So everybody had that opportunity to not just pick a song but adapt it.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. That makes it even more interesting. I think that everybody kind of brought their own song to the table and did that. That's the end result is fantastic. So I encourage everybody to go check that out. Pick up a copy online. I want to get back though to the new album.
Yeah,
I read that you guys self-produced this,
we did.
and it's the first one you've done in a minute. And you got a grant through the Greater Columbus Arts Council to do so.
We actually got two grants. Yeah,
Okay.
two grants that funded the recording and mixing of the album. Yeah.
So what was the process like of, you know, applying for that grant, eventually getting it? How did that? I'm not super familiar with how that works. I think it's a really cool concept.
Yeah,
So like, take me through that if you would.
sure. So, Greater Columbus Arts Council has sort of an ongoing grant cycle. I don't know that they do this now. I think they changed it a little bit, but they used to offer individual grants that was up to like a certain amount of money. It was like up to $1,000, let's say. And then there was an artist, like a group grant. So if you were an artist or a musician, you could apply either way. I'm an individual or I'm a group. The group one had the advantage of being for more money. And there are grants that fund the production of art. So they're not going to fund certain aspects, but it can fund the production of art. It can fund. We got a grant from them in the past that actually funded marketing for our last record. It was like working with a marketing consultant. So sometimes it's the production of art, sometimes it's the promotion of art. And they allow you to apply for a grant per year. So we applied for one in 2021, got that one. Once that year expired and we completed that grant cycle, we applied for the same thing again to finish the album, and they were gracious enough to grant us funds to finish it. I believe now, I have to double check this, but I think that they're only offering individual grants now. They're not doing the group ones anymore, but they have raised the ask amount for individuals. So it's great.
Yeah,
I mean, having an arts council that is that supportive of local art is huge.
yeah, that's really really cool. I found that to be very interesting, and also, I mean that's a high compliment to you and your band. That they would view you guys as multiple times being somebody that they wanted to invest that in. I think that's really cool.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, getting the second one, it really showed their faith in what we were working on and what we were able to sort of show them at the end of the first grant cycle.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, you self-produced this album, and it was what was the how long has it been? It's been a minute since you guys self-produced, right?
Yeah, last time we did one on our own was in 2013, so it'll be
Okay.
like a decade in the fall.
Yeah.
Actually, we're gonna put out. I'm hoping to put out a remix and master of that album in the fall, 10-year anniversary. But yeah, it's been 10 years.
So why the decision to go back to that? What was the thought process behind that?
Well, this was the first record of new music that we made with Brogan Riley, our guitar player, and Dan Ida, who's our bass player now kind of took our previous bass player, Tim Jennings, took his place as Tim's family was growing. He needed to step away. So having a couple new people in the band, um, we had done the last few albums with the same person in the same studios, the same process, which is, great that we love those records. But with a couple of new people in the band, there was the feeling of maybe we should make ourselves a little bit more uncomfortable. Maybe we should try a different approach, work with different people. And we decided the way we wanted to approach it was, to produce it ourselves so that we could go to different people for their specialty. We wanted to work with Tony to record some of the basic tracking, the drums, the bass, the guitars, because we've worked with him in a live setting for many years. We trust working with him, and then we decided to work with James in the mixing because we felt like his mixing approach was kind of aggressive and had this energy that we wanted for these songs. So by producing it ourselves, we were able to basically say, okay, we're sitting on the top, kind of controlling the project. We want this person's specialty on this, and this person's specialty on this, and we will be the ones sort of overseeing the whole project, which was an interesting experience, and we feel like it worked out as we had hoped.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's no easy task
No,
to
no,
to
no.
wear all those hats. My
Sure.
word. So that you gave a little bit of insight into the production side of things. Um, we talked about the taking a couple years to really do the songwriting. Where does this album come from? What's the inspiration behind this? What do you want people to know about it?
Yeah. Well, from a lyrical perspective, the name Heirlooms comes from a lyric in the first single that we put out back in October called Stubborn Blood. And that whole song is about mental health. It's about, you ever heard that old adage that mental health is not your fault, but it's your responsibility?
Yeah.
Because it's often inherited, right? It's something that gets passed down with lineage. And that's a lot of what that song is about, hence Stubborn Blood. And that idea kind of permeated into other songs. Demons is a very good example of that. And Heirlooms was the title that Leanna really felt strongly about for the album, because a lot of it deals with that. These things that we, as we get older, we come to understand better over time, even if it's difficult to deal with. And there's a lot of that in the through line kind of lyrical ideas on the album. Not every song, but a lot of them. And then musically, if you're familiar with our band, I think what you'll hear on this album is that there's a lot more energy. And I don't know if that was just like angst build up from the pandemic, but we usually
Four
have a lot of,
years, man. Just like
yeah.
we've got to get it out, right?
I mean, we usually have a lot of we'll have a couple ballads on an album, but this one really doesn't have that. The last two songs are a little slower, but they're very dynamic and loud. So there's a lot of energy, and I got to give James Harker, who mixed the album. I don't know if you're familiar with his bands, Spirit of the Bear and Ghost Soul Trio. He did such a great job mixing, and I wish that there was a title for him beyond just mixing for this album, because working with him very closely really defined the sound of the album and is part of what gave it a lot of energy. And that's why we decided to work with him. So hopefully that energy really comes through to the listener.
Let's let's call him Mix Master Extraordinaire.
I think you'd like that.
How's that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
No, that's great. Yeah, I mean, a lot of energy on this. That's exciting. Yeah, I mean, there's probably something to be said about that, and it's such real um, themes that I know I can relate to. I think so many out there can, and especially in this time frame of, you know, you know, it's really interesting to me what you know the pandemic did for creatives, right? Such a difficult time for everybody. You know what I mean? There's like so many people lost loved ones or got really sick themselves,
Sure.
lost work. It's terrible. Um, and it's really interesting how you mentioned the live streams the artist did, like to try to find a silver lining in this really difficult time. And also a lot of the themes that it really brought out in songwriting, like what you're talking about with your album. So I think I think that's something that it really hits home with so many people. I'm excited to dive even deeper into it, knowing that background. I think.
Yeah, it's weird to think about like how the pandemic influenced it, because there aren't any songs about the pandemic, obviously, but
Yeah.
I think subconsciously there's something about being it's like an isolated state for so long that maybe makes you notice things about yourself that maybe, I don't know, you just become more aware of things about other people around you, and it also just kind of gave you more time to think, which can be a good thing, can be a bad thing, but it definitely
Uh,
is a
uh,
thing. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. Um, no doubt about it. So I'm gonna kind of touch on some of your inspirations, I guess.
hmm, sure,
Some of coming up, some of the artists that made you want to make music. And this is kind of piggybacking on, and I don't know, if these are the bands, but like talking about costumes, other bands that you all enjoy. You know, coming up, growing up, who made you want to make music, and and also today, current bands, who do you find inspiration in?
sure. Well, I have two Smashing Pumpkins tattoos on my arm, and that was the band that really, when I was probably about 12, my friend's brother gave me a copy of Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, and that was the thing that really kind of flipped the switch for me. I think that that's the beginning of the path I took that led me to go into music school and led me to the things I'm doing now. I listened to music with my parents before that and things, but our musical tastes were kind of different, even as I was a kid. And that was, I think, the first band that really sparked something in me. And them and the Beatles. I remember my mom buying me Abbey Road when I was in high school, and sharing that with me. Now, I as I get older, I feel like I've gravitated more and more to things I used to listen to, but there are a lot of writers now that still are very inspiring to me. I've been a big fan for a long time, and still now, of Conor Oberst and Bright Eyes. Just as a songwriter, one of my favorites, and always been a big fan of Death Cab for Cutie, which is probably fairly obvious in listening to our music. Um, yeah, and so those are, as far as really more modern things, that's kind of
Yeah.
what comes to mind.
Let me ask you this then, and I don't know if you saw this interview, but Billy Corgan talking about Smashing Pumpkins, he's been making the rounds lately, talking a lot about the '90s music scene. And did you
Mhm.
did you hear his interview and the excerpt that about Kurt Cobain and him?
Oh, about like he lost his greatest competitor.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did read that.
I found
That's an
I found that.
interesting perspective.
Yeah, I and for the record, I'm a fan of Nirvana. I'm a fan of Smashing Pumpkins.
Hmm.
Um, and to expound on that a little bit, he said with Kurt gone, he goes, "Well, I know I can beat all the rest of these guys,
Right,
right?"
right.
And I love Billy Corgan, but that was a statement.
Well, he
that
he
was
is
that
notorious
was
for
that was
being,
bold.
yeah, he's notorious for being kind of arrogant, and I don't think this is something he would have said in like the year after Kurt Cobain died, because he
Yeah,
was with
yeah,
Courtney Love before Kurt Cobain was. So sorry, I'm
yeah.
getting phone calls as this is happening. But yeah, I don't think he would have said that then. But it's an interesting perspective beyond the like cockiness.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
So the first
he's
thing
kind
is
of
like,
right,
wow, that's cocky.
right.
Wow. But then it's like, all right, this is how you view yourself, and it is interesting.
But like mid to late '90s, I mean, they were on top of the world. So I mean,
They were.
he did get to that point. So, but yeah, that competition thing is interesting. But it's funny because like music as competition is always a challenging thing. That's why when I was a kid, like I always hated, like, oh, they're gonna have a battle of the bands. Like that's a weird thing to me. But if it's somebody who's pushing you to be better, or if it's because you love somebody's music and you want it to be that good, or you want somebody else to hear yours and have that same emotion that you had, then I think that's good inspiration. He put it in context of competition, but I think if you just turn that angle of what he said a little bit, maybe he meant it a little bit
Yeah.
this way, then I think it's good.
you have to give people some leeway. That like nobody says the perfect thing at every time. But
Sure.
yeah, I thought it was interesting. I was like, wow, that's you know they were definitely one of the biggest bands of the '90s. But to automatically just be like, oh, I can beat Eddie Vedder and Chris Cornell and Lane Staley and others. I was like, okay, wow, okay, well.
Right. Absolutely.
It's a bold statement. But it was really interesting that how he viewed Kurt as his greatest rival, but also you could tell with such admiration. It was really, I think, you know, caught my attention, no doubt about
Yeah.
it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I was reading on you guys' website,
Mhm.
um, and in the band's words, which is true about so many bands, but you guys had a lot of momentum leading up into 2020,
Yeah.
and then so many other people kind of stifle things for a while. You got to kind of pivot, get creative, or whatever. So where were things going with the band? I know you guys played Bunbury.
Mhm.
You were featured in multiple publications. American Songwriter. You won a talking about CD 92.9. You won a like a best band competition with them. I'm paraphrasing the title, but a lot
Yeah.
of really big things happening. In towards the end of the decade of you guys being a band, where, in your opinion, where were things going? And we're going to get into where they're going. After this kind of break that everybody had.
For sure. I mean, we definitely had a lot of momentum going into through 2017, 2018. We won that competition. We got to open for Spoon, played Bunbury. We had that new album out in 2019. So we had a lot of momentum. But at the same time, we were all getting older and all in the midst of other careers as well. So I don't think that we were heading towards a point where we were going to like, okay, we're going to be touring 300 days out of the year and like focusing on that. We just wanted to keep making records and have as many people hear them as possible. And so that trajectory was hopefully getting to the point where more people would hear them. The pandemic definitely, again, slowed things down, but I still think that we were, as we get older, we're more at that point where you're less likely to just sort of drop everything and more likely to try to find a way to sustain things, which I think is kind of where we were heading.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, whenever you reach how old are you?
I just turned 37.
Okay, yeah. So you get to a point where like, all right, like careers or families and everybody may have different ideas, there's only so much you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I mean that's with that in mind, you guys are really headed there. And I think interestingly enough, I didn't know your band at the time, but I went to 2017 Bunbury Festival, but just not on the day
Okay.
that you guys played,
Oh, sure. Okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I missed you. I missed you. I went to go see Muse.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We were
Yeah,
on the day with Death
Death
Cab
the
and the
Death Cab. Yeah, I
Shins.
looked that up and
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, did I didn't see them. Like I was looking at the daily lineup, I'm like I missed them. Yeah, shoot,
Right.
could have caught you a couple years earlier. But I mean, so for people that aren't familiar with Bunbury, they're on a hiatus now, unfortunately, because
Yeah.
of the pandemic. But it was a fairly large festival that they did for but probably I don't know 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, something like that, maybe.
Something like that. Yeah. I was
Yeah,
going to say 6 or 7 years. Yeah.
yeah, like
It's in Cincinnati.
in
Yeah.
Cincinnati, Ohio. Tons of big bands. That is, um, no small feat to play that festival.
Sure.
Uh, alongside so many greats. So, have you guys done any other festivals? Was that the first taste of that you had had?
That was the first like big one, and they had like a smaller stage where a lot of bands played. So we weren't like on the same stage as Death Cab. The festival had a couple different stages.
Still get big crowds
Um,
though at those small
oh, for
those
sure.
at those smaller stages. You still get big crowds, yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, but we did a lot. We've done a lot of other festivals locally and regionally. We've done
Mm,
Arts Fest and when they used to have Independence Day and
yeah.
Comfest and things like that. But that was the first like big festival that we had done.
So how does the experience, aside from just playing in front of possibly more people, how does the experience differ from like your mindset going into that set, going into that show, doing something like that versus a more intimate setting at a rock club or something like that?
Well.
Or does
you
it?
know,
Maybe it doesn't for you.
well, it kind of doesn't that like when you play a small club, especially locally, like the people that are there know you more often and they know your music. Whereas you play a festival, it's more about exposure. So you're playing to an audience that is a lot less aware of who you are, which is good and bad. You know, you have this opportunity to make a first impression, but it's hard to know whether the audience is going to get into what you're doing because you don't know they don't know what to expect, and neither do you. So I think it's kind of exciting that way, but it also can be like a tipping point. It's hard to know how that's going to go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like you don't have sing-alongs necessarily because like the whole crowd. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
probably
Oh
not.
yeah.
Like you don't have your crowd there. I'm sure obviously there's your fans are there, but um, yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Just to kind of like, all right, well, let's win these people over who just come to check us out because then they don't know who we are.
Right. But
That's
people are generally pretty friendly, and it's usually a nice day, and they've been drinking for a while, so it's usually a good atmosphere. It's just a different atmosphere.
yeah. It was a very well put together festival,
Oh
I
yeah.
thought, and everybody
Hmm.
was super nice there. A ton of great bands. That was my first time seeing the 1975
Oh
on
okay.
that
Yeah.
day, who I've always really liked, but now that Matt Healy is dating Taylor Swift, there's a lot of things coming to light about him maybe not being such a great guy. I don't
Sure.
know what's
Yeah.
then I was like, I don't know anymore. Like, leave it to the
Yeah.
Swifties to dig the dirt, huh?
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about that. I have to dig more into it, but
It's
yeah, that's
it's not looking great for him.
no, it's not looking great. No.
Not looking great. Um, no, but we're talking about shows. Let's talk a little bit more about the big show you've got coming up here in
Yeah.
Columbus, Ohio, June 2nd. Tell the people all about it, man.
Yeah, so June 2nd, it's Friday night. We're gonna be playing at Natalie's Grand View, which
Which
if
is a
you haven't
great
been,
great venue.
I was gonna say it's really a nice venue. Ever since they closed down the one in Clintonville, that one in Grandview, I mean it's really really nice. So we'll be there. Doors are at 7. There's a band called Willow that we really like that is playing at 8, and then we're up at 9.
And you have physical copies of your album there as well, I'm assuming, or
We
no?
do. So, well,
Yeah.
it's funny because we actually I'm holding it now because it just came in the mail. We actually ordered CDs this time because we were amazed last record. We did vinyl and how many people asked about CDs. So we
Yeah.
ordered CDs this time and are going to do we're going to launch a vinyl pre-order campaign hopefully next week with the release of the album, um, or this coming week. But yeah, we'll have CDs if anybody's interested in that. I know that
Yeah.
seems like a little bit of an antiquated thing, but a lot of people ask for them, and hey, it's great to have something physical. I think that's what people want more than anything. It's just something that they can hold.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big vinyl guy myself, so I'll definitely be getting a copy when you guys do that for sure.
For
But
sure.
CDs are, I mean, it makes so much more sense, I think. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's your first year as a band or you've been doing it forever. Like vinyl is just it's so pricey and it takes forever, or doesn't it? I mean, like there's so few
Oh
pressing plants
yeah.
anymore.
Well, yeah, it took us. We had it pressed here locally, but it still was like 8 weeks, 8 or 10 weeks. So
Yeah,
it does take a while, and yes, it's extremely pricey, which is why we wanted to do a pre-order campaign. The last time we just sort of ordered them all up front, and yeah, that was expensive.
yeah. I mean, it's a smart way to do it, but it's so cool though, man. I mean, like, as a musician to be able to, I don't know whenever you first had a vinyl pressed, but whenever you held that had to be a cool moment, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, hearing the test pressing, just hearing yourself on vinyl, even after being a band that long, that was definitely a unique experience. And for the people that are in the band now that haven't had that experience, it'd be hopefully we're able to do that because it's really cool. And I think the physical item thing, just being have the artwork that big and like the whole presentation of it, everything about it, just sort of I don't know speaks to the pageantry of releasing an album.
and I feel like everything that we've learned about heirlooms in this conversation,
Mhm.
vinyl would be a beautiful way to experience that.
I
honestly.
think so. I think so. So, hopefully once we get the campaign launched, maybe Jesse, you can help us spread the word. We'll try to get that out there, but that,
Absolutely.
hopefully we're able to make that happen.
I will post the shit out of it.
Awesome. That's great.
Because it's all I love it. Do you guys? So aside from that show, and I know we kind of touched on the difficulties of getting out on the road and things, but do you guys have any plans to do any touring at all behind this album? Are you able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, we have some other things planned for the summer. Most of it is local right now. There are some places we've been wanting to get to. We played in Chicago shortly before the pandemic. We've been wanting to get out to Nashville and places like that. So those are the kind of short list plans. But there's been so much focus on just getting the album done that I don't think we've had a lot of time to like think past that. I'm just now like last week starting to think about like, okay, what can we do with the rest of the summer? Because it has really been, and part of it is just me. Like I get so wrapped up in the details, and it's like an all-encompassing thing. And then the promotional aspect, I need to kind of like get through the fog of releasing the album, and then I'll be able to see what's on the horizon.
Yeah, completely understood. Like I
Yeah,
said, you're wearing a lot of hats with this one. There's only so much
sure.
time in the day. Yeah. Well, that's cool. That's exciting. So you guys have played Chicago and Nashville before?
We've never played Nashville, but we
Yeah.
have played Chicago. We did it last time we did it. It was. Have you ever heard of So Far?
Mm-mm.
They have them. They're like chapters in different cities, and basically it's like if you're traveling, you can book a gig through them, and they'll gather the crowd, and they put the show on. And it's usually at like a somewhat unconventional venue. We did it once
Oh,
in Denver. My wife and I, Leanna, who's also in the band, we were out in Denver visiting friends. We had connections with So Far, and I was like, I'm gonna reach out and see if we can find a gig. And it was just like in this building in like a loft, and they brought 50 people in and just did the show. We did it in Chicago, and it was supposed to be on the rooftop of an apartment building, but it rained, so it was literally in somebody's living room in this apartment complex. So there's like 50 people in this living room. We're standing in the living room. I am toe to toe with the front row of people. Like literally, I could touch them with my foot, and it was such an intimate environment. But it was such a cool show, and everybody was so attentive. And just because they're there specifically, it's not like going to a bar. They're there specifically to hear music, and so that was really cool. So that's usually when we travel, that's one of the first ways that we try to do shows, because it's just like you're going to be able to go play for an audience. A lot of times you go travel somewhere and you don't know what you're going to get. And then there's places locally we're trying to get up to this summer. We haven't played in Cleveland or Cincinnati in a little while, and I'm originally from Youngstown,
okay.
so trying to get out that way.
Very cool. Yeah, that sounds like a really great model. So far, it's called.
Yeah, it exists here in Columbus. It
Uh,
existed and then it went away, and then somebody revived it. I don't know how active it is in Columbus, but in other cities it's very, very active.
that's very
Yeah,
cool.
which is SOFAR, one word. So if you
Yeah.
look online, like So Far Chicago or So Far Columbus, or that's how you'll find them.
Well, hopefully at some point you guys get to have your rooftop Beatles moment concert. Bringing it
Yeah, that
back
would have been
around.
that would have been so cool. And I was so when we got to this apartment, like they had given us the wrong address. It was just everything got confused, and I was like so pissed. And I was like in such a bad mood. And then we got set up, and this audience of people were so kind that it just turned into such a good show. So a good lesson when you're traveling as a band, you never know like what little hiccup is going to lead to something really, really great.
Yeah, that's it. Silver linings, right? Back to the silver
Mm-hmm.
linings. I want to talk a little bit about your podcast before
Yeah,
I let you go. An
yeah.
hour of our time,
An hour of our
and
time. Yeah.
the concept is, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys each spend an hour of research on the topic, then do an hour show, right?
That's the idea. Yeah, we pick a topic each episode. We say an hour of research, but I feel like we probably all end up doing more than that. Then we get
Yeah.
together and talk about it for an hour, and the topics range from the historical to the cultural, the social. Like for example, our last episode was about like short-lived inventions, things in history that were invented and died out pretty quickly, and why that happened. But before that, we did an episode about the Doolittle raid, which was the U.S. Army's air response to the Japanese attacking Pearl Harbor. So we've done episodes on Satanism, and like it can
Yeah.
really, really be broad. but it's a lot of fun. And the guys I do it with, Mark Craycraft, got a history degree, and then Joe Wood, he's a paleontologist.
Oh, cool.
So it's a lot of fun for us to do those things.
Yeah, I really enjoy the show. You messaged me about it some months ago, and I really I've been listening to some episodes here and there, with many more that I have marked that I want to get into. But I mean, like like you said, like I saw zombies and aliens and fast food and
Mm-hmm.
an early one that I just saw recently, and I haven't found the episode yet. But you guys, it looks like one of the earliest ones you ever posted about. At least you did one on wrestling.
Yes, we did one about wrestling. That was like the second or third. We're about to hit our 200th episode, so that one was probably our second or third one. That was really fun. Yeah, it was about the history of wrestling.
Well, I want to, like I said, I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet. But I'm a wrestling fan, and that caught my
Sure.
attention. I was like,
Yeah.
I love history. I love the paranormal and and all these kind of things. And you guys just cover so many cool things. And then I saw that, like wrestling, and that's something that I grew up with. I loved it. Those guys were superheroes to me. And in my adult life, I just stopped watching. I'm like, like
I did the
not
same thing, exactly the
right.
same thing.
Not that adults can't enjoy it, because I'm about to explain that they can, but
Yeah.
like it was during. I'm a big sports fan, right? So it was
Mm-hmm.
during, back to the pandemic. There was no sports, and the only type of sporting thing that existed was wrestling. And there was this new wrestling company called AEW that started,
Sure. Yeah.
right? And I got really into that, and that since then I've been a fan again. So, I don't care if it spoils anything on the episode or not, but I want to know a little bit of, like, tell me about like, your experiences with it growing up and some of the guys that you like.
Absolutely. Well, I grew up in that phase of like the Monday Night Wars, Raw and Nitro, and I was
Yeah.
actually like a WCW kid because my mom, like for some reason, didn't want me to watch WWF. I guess looking back, I could sort of see
Yeah.
why, but
Yeah,
I
it's
still
like,
watched it at my friend's house. But I loved Sting. Sting was my favorite. I dressed up for Sting for Halloween when I was probably like 13. Um,
Sting's the
you know,
best, man.
and as much as I loved the Undertaker and like Stone Cold and The Rock and stuff, but I was a WWCW or I was a WCW kid, and I was all about Sting and like Kevin Nash and those guys. I had like a bunch of Wolfpack T-shirts. Oh, for sure, I had all that stuff.
I love it. Are you aware of AEW? Have you watched any of it?
I haven't really watched much of it, but I have heard of it, and I have heard really good things. That it's definitely the superior product now.
It is, in my opinion. And the reason I bring that up is because maybe you're not aware, but Sting, at the age of 64, still wrestles in AEW.
Does he
And
really?
he does it in a protected way. He does it in tag matches. He comes in, he gets signature moves. It makes him look really good. You know what I
That's good.
mean? And he doesn't look like winded or anything. He's mentoring a younger guy who wears the face paint, called Darby Allin. Sting looks
Nice.
great. They've shown how you can make a legend still look good and not expose him to, what I mean, looking bad in the ring or whatever. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's really, really fun. So, like, yeah, check it out, man. Like, Sting's probably going to retire soon in about a year or so, but he wrestles like once or twice, maybe three times a year, tag matches. It's really, really fun. I
I'll have to
think I
check
think
that out. Yeah, I haven't seen him in a long time.
Yeah, he looks good, man. He looks good. And he cuts a mean promo.
Oh, always did. Even when he wasn't saying anything,
Yeah, I
just
know.
up in the rafters. Like, yeah, always good promo.
That's so cool. What are some of your favorite episodes or favorite topics that you've done on the show? Or because
Yeah,
I've only heard a few, and I
yeah.
guess for me and anybody else listening, and like, I want you to plug your show. I want people to go check the show out. You know, um, but you know where to start? I guess if you're just getting into it.
Yeah, I mean, where to start is really tough, but it
Yeah,
depends on
I
what you
guess
get
I guess that's
into.
a tough question. Just yeah,
Yeah. We have some where we have really good guests. Like we did one about the history of radio, and we did it with Randy Malloy, who owns and runs CD 92.9. We did an episode about the history of beer with some of the guys from Land Grant. And then we have some sort of like anthology ones. Like every couple months, we do an episode about idioms. Well, we'll like dig up an idiom, different idioms, and talk about their origins and what they mean and where those sayings came from. But I think some of my favorites are like the kind of pure history ones. We've done a lot of World War II episodes. We just did a two-part series about King Tutankhamun, which it was really interesting. And then we do some that I think are fun that are kind of like, you mentioned we talked about zombies and aliens and magic. All of those are from a very scientific angle. So it's like
Yeah.
zombies in nature or magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is really happening there? Not to like expose it, but like more the history. It was more like the history of stage magic. And I
Things can
like digging
be
back into that.
explained in a way that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are some of my favorites, I think. But we've done so many. I will say this: for our 100th episode, we did it's like a radio drama about Christopher Columbus and how much of a jerk he was. So that's not a good one to start with because it's a very different style. But I do think that it was pretty fun. So
Yeah.
I like that. So I don't know. After so many, it's hard to say. We've been doing it for like 7 years now.
If you're like blindly patriotic, don't start with the one how Christopher Columbus is a jerk.
Or maybe you should, because you probably
Well,
had,
yeah, I guess my definition of patriotism, that would be a good way to start. Yeah.
right, exactly. So, but yeah, I mean, check it out. It's a lot of fun, and we do it every other week. It's kind of pretty. We try to be pretty consistent. So,
Yeah, it's a great show. I really enjoy it. Anything else you want the people to know about, man?
no, just June 2nd, just a few
Yeah.
days. Heirlooms will be streaming everywhere, so give it a listen. If you're in Columbus, consider coming out to Natalie's on the 2nd. It's going to be a really fun show. We're going to play a long set, so hopefully we'll see you there.
Yeah, a lot of stuff off the new album, I'm assuming.
We're going to do the whole thing from top to bottom, and then
Oh,
we're going to do
awesome.
a set of old stuff. So,
I
and
love
if
that.
you're curious, look us up on YouTube. Find our Stubborn Blood music video. It's our tribute to slasher films from the '80s. We had a lot of fun making it. We put it out this past Halloween. That's a lot of fun too.
And where can people find the album after June 2nd?
Yeah, so again, it'll be streaming everywhere. So if you use Spotify, use Apple Music, whatever you use, Tidal, it'll be streaming there. If you go to davebukerhistorians.com, that's where you'll be able to easily find links when we launch this vinyl campaign. It'll also be all over our social media. So if you use Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you can find us there as well. But yeah, if you're looking to listen to the album, just find it wherever you stream music, and it'll be waiting for you on the 2nd.
I'm gonna tell the people just to go ahead and buy it because they're gonna want to buy it. Just
Sure.
just buy the album. Just buy it.
If you want to buy it, we're on Bandcamp, and if you go to our website, there's a little link to that. But again, the vinyl pre-order, we'll get that up, and that'll be a good source.
Yeah, and if you're watching this show, then you found me somehow, and I'll be sharing it as well. So you can find it there too.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely, man. Listen, buddy, this is a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah, you too. I'm really glad we got a chance to do this, and maybe sometime we'll have to have you on an hour of our time.
Yeah, man, that'd be fun. I'm always down. We'll have to make that happen for sure.
For sure.
But yeah, but brother, Dave Buker, new album out June 2nd. Heirlooms, Dave Buker and the Historians. It's awesome. Everybody, if you're in Columbus, go to the show. If you're into if you're into vinyl, buy the vinyl. If you're into CDs, buy the CDs. Support this man's music because he's doing big things. I think you're really going to enjoy it, and I'm a big fan. So thanks again. Appreciate you, my man.
I appreciate it so much, Jesse. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this wonderful episode, everybody. Until next time, this is Sound Out.